Anthony Parker had always been a model of honesty and integrity for subordinates. As the owner and director of the trading company, he managed it in a way that no one felt humiliated or underappreciated. The only problem for Anthony, oddly enough, was staffing. There was often a shortage of loaders at the warehouses, as for some reason, people didn't seem to ever work there for longer than a month. Anthony did his best to address the issue, but the shortage of staff remained a significant concern. What don't they like? They get monthly bonuses and benefits, a full social package. The businessman pondered in bewilderment. Francis Garcia had been his deputy for 2 years and had his own opinion on the matter. Mr. Parker, it's not about the money and bonuses, it's the human factor that's at play here. Plus, they simply get tired as it's difficult manual labor. The deputy's words caught Anthony off guard. He always thought that everything was in order at his company, but apparently it was quite the opposite. Moreover, the company's profits had dropped by almost half, and it happened at the same time. Anthony had achieved everything in his life through hard work. At some point, the future businessman even had to work as a loader himself, but he always remembered those tough times with a smile. After all, it was only by understanding the complex world of business from the inside that one could achieve that kind of success. Anthony figured out this simple truth at the age of 23 when he started earning his first check as a student. However, times change. Over 15 years had passed since then, and Anthony understood that the younger generation might have different values than those he held back in the day. While the situation with lower-level employees was somewhat understandable, the reason for the decline in profits remained a complete mystery. Of course, Anthony tried to solve his problem through several inspections, but that didn't give away any results. According to Francis, there was no violations of any kind, which couldn't help but surprise the owner of the company. So what's happening to the profits then? Anthony pondered as he walked down the hallway. Already at the door, he bumped into a young man in his early 20s who was looking at the company owner with a bewildered expression on his face. "Are you looking for someone, young man?" Anthony asked in surprise. The young man hesitated for a moment, then timidly replied, "Yes, sir. I saw a job ad looking for loaders. Can I apply for a job at your warehouse?" Anthony smiled. "You've come to the right place, young man. We do need loaders. Go straight to the hallway, then turn left. That's where my deputy's office is located. Mr. Garcia is also in charge of HR, so he'll definitely be able to assist you." The young man warmly thanked the director and picked up the pace as he headed in the direction Anthony had indicated. Well, the situation seemed to be changing for the better, Anthony thought with satisfaction. A month passed. The businessman had already forgotten about the issue of the shortage of loaders when a new disaster struck his company. Unfortunately, it happened on the eve of a meeting with representatives of a Japanese firm that had decided to invest in Anthony Parker's business. It seemed that there were no obstacles to concluding such an important deal. However, a day before the negotiations, the situation took a difficult turn. The company's in-house translator came down with a severe case of angina and physically couldn't participate in the meeting. All of this happened very suddenly, and finding a replacement in just a few hours seemed nearly impossible, especially considering that the meeting was scheduled for the next day. If the business partners hadn't arrived from abroad, the meeting could be postponed, but not in this case. Anthony knew from experience, if you didn't greet the investors properly, you could give up any hope of a fruitful relationship. Business was a delicate matter, and those involved in it had to understand the responsibility placed upon them. Trying to find a way out of the situation, Anthony was getting more and more agitated. Where can I find a translator in just a few hours? Moreover, a Japanese one. Do you even know how unlikely that is? He exclaimed during the emergency meeting called in light of the impending visit of the Japanese investors. I'll try to come up with something, of course, but the likelihood of finding a competent translator on such short notice is very low, Francis Garcia replied. Anthony shook his head in resignation. He understood full well that there were very few competent specialists in this field, and therefore they were highly valued and were rarely available at such short notice. The meeting room fell into a tense silence. It seemed as though you could hear the ticking of the wall clock hanging next to the entrance. Suddenly, the warehouse manager timidly raised his hand, clearly intending to remind the company owner of his presence. "Mr. Thompson, did you want something?" Anthony asked hopefully. The man hesitated for a moment and then said, Yes, sir, I have a suggestion. It's risky, but given our situation, I don't think we have any other choice." Anthony was clearly intrigued. "So what's your suggestion?" Henry Thompson interlocked his fingers and, trying to contain his excitement, continued. "We have a loader working at our warehouse. His name is Spencer. Well, he's studying foreign languages at the university, and his specialty is Japanese." At that moment, Anthony immediately remembered the young man he had bumped into in the hallway about a month ago. Why didn't he mention that he knew several languages? A blush appeared on the businessman's cheeks. He felt that there was a chance to save the situation with the investors. On the other hand, he understood that this joy might be premature. What is Spencer's level of proficiency? Can he speak Japanese fluently? Anthony asked, still not entirely believing his fortune. Mr. Thompson's face broke into a satisfied smile. "His knowledge is very extensive, sir. He can translate Japanese songs and even write poetry." "So why isn't he working as a translator then? How did such a talented young man end up as a loader?" Anthony asked in surprise. The warehouse manager's response shook him to the core. "Spencer is only in his junior year at the university, so he doesn't have a diploma yet. Essentially, he's a man without a formal education and skills, so we hired him as a loader. Who else could he be?" Anthony fell silent for a moment, then dismissed the meeting. At that moment, he only wanted one thing: to talk to this miracle translator in person. When Spencer came into Anthony's office at the request of the warehouse manager, he had no idea what it was about. The company owner started from afar. He asked the young man various questions, including inquiries about his past, family situation, and plans for the future. It turned out that Spencer Moore lived with his mother and a younger brother suffering from cerebral palsy. He had never known his father, as he had passed away when Spencer was 3 years old. Because of this, the family often found themselves in dire restraints, struggling to make ends meet. Spencer had a passion for foreign languages from early childhood and independently delved into the intricacies of translation using books he got at the city library. Thanks to this, he managed to get a scholarship at the university. Since the family was constantly short of money, Spencer decided to find a part-time job during the summer vacation to ease his mother's and younger brother's lives a bit. Having listened to Spencer's story, Anthony fell silent for a brief moment. The longer this businessman spoke with this sweet and kind young man, the more he liked him. When Anthony asked Spencer to translate a few complex phrases from Japanese, he was amazed by the accuracy and speed of the translation provided by the young loader. At that moment, the businessman realized that the problem with the translator would be resolved right then and there. After shaking Spencer's hand, Anthony warmly congratulated him on his new position at the firm. "Now you'll be working as a translator in our company. Forget about the warehouse. I will personally make sure that you receive the remainder of your earnings, plus a small bonus from me personally." Spencer's eyes lit up with joy. When he applied for the job at this company, he couldn't have even imagined that within a month, he would get such an impressive promotion. The next day, Spencer was one of the first employees to get to the office. Anthony was already waiting for him in his office to provide more detailed instructions. However, when Spencer looked around hesitantly and told him very important news, Anthony felt quite uneasy. According to the former loader, someone was selling products from the warehouse, bypassing the sales department. It happened mainly during the night shift. Essentially, it was illegal and caused damage to the company and Anthony Parker personally. "I've seen it happen several times, mostly during the night shift, of course. The security at the entrance was likely involved too, because the trucks could enter the warehouse area without any issues," Spencer added in a hushed tone. Anthony turned pale. Who was in charge of all this? Who gave the orders to transport the products? Spencer lowered his head and replied, "Francis Garcia was in charge of the loading. I personally witnessed it." Only then did Anthony understand why he had been suffering such significant losses over the past few months. All this time, Francis, his right-hand man, had been shamelessly stealing from the company. Fortunately, the business negotiations went well, and Spencer proved himself as a top-notch professional right from the beginning. The Japanese investors were pleasantly surprised that such a young man was fluent in their language. In response, Anthony simply smiled meaningfully and glanced at Francis, who unknowingly had already sealed his own fate. Immediately after the negotiations concluded, Francis was removed from his position. There was a huge argument and an internal investigation was initiated. Francis's guilt was proven within a week. Of course, he tried to seek forgiveness from Anthony, but it was all in vain. The businessman couldn't forgive betrayal, but he was ready to allow Francis to make amends for his actions. To avoid imprisonment, Francis had to repay a significant debt with the company by working as a loader at the same warehouse he had been stealing from. As for Spencer, he was in for another promotion. He was appointed head of the sales department and quickly revealed a previously unknown talent. Of course, he didn't quit his studies and continued to master foreign languages just as before. As for Anthony, he proudly looked at his young deputy and thanked the heavens for sending him such an intelligent and dedicated employee.